3 for 27, removed Tector to help the West Indies restrict Ireland to 194 for 7 from their allotment. Now, Ireland captain Paul Stirling was full of praise for his spinner, Matthew Humphries, but suggests his team's overall preparations were affected by the adverse weather conditions. Here's what he said. A couple of positives in there, although it was a tough day overall. Special mention to Matthew Humphries, one of the best spells in T20 cricket for us. The message was to give the chase everything we had. We did not have an opportunity to go outdoors due to the weather. We gave it our best shot, but we fell short in all three facets. Meanwhile, the West Indies captain, Shai Hope, was satisfied with the approach from his batters, which he insists is the template going forward.
I believe that's the brand of cricket that we're trying to play. It's something that we always speak about, throwing that first punch, ensuring we put pressure on their bowlers, don't allow them to settle as much. It's something I felt as though we lacked a bit in the England series. But yeah, it's great to see the guys really finishing this one on a high. You know, we didn't get cricket in the first two T20 Is, but just to finish the tour on a high, displaying the way we want to go about playing our cricket was a great thing to see.
International cricket commentator Nikhil Uttamchandani joined us via Zoom as we assess just how much credence to give to this performance by the West Indies team. Well, Nikhil, the first two games were rained out. Good that they didn't leave Ireland with at least one fixture completed, and it was pretty impressive for the West Indies.
Yeah, Lance, it was impressive to some regard. I think I'm more disappointed by the way the tour panned out in both formats. I mean, yeah, it's good to get a win in any cricket, in any format against any team. But I do think that when you analyze the 4 matches in the T20 section of the tour, it serves as a massive wake-up call for the West Indies with, 6 months to another T20 World Cup. And look, you had a year where this is your first T20 International series. Given how much IPL and franchise cricket has been played, I thought it served as an eye-opener and a wake-up call to Darren Sammy and his men as to just kind of how far off they are to the best teams in the world with that T20 World Cup looming.
Yeah, Evin Lewis was impressive. He has not played a lot of international cricket in the past 5 or 6 years, but we know his quality. How much did you read into his performance on Sunday?
Look, I think with Evin Lewis, Lance, we know that when he has a good day, it's going to be a really good day. And I think I can go back to maybe the last couple of years in all cricket, CPL, international cricket, knocks like this. When he gets runs, he tends to go quite big. I think about his CPL 100 in 2024. The only issue that you could probably find is that you don't get these big scores consistently enough. And look, it's always going to be high risk, the way he plays in the power play, the approach he takes to batting. But I just think, one, if the West Indies are happy with this approach and happy for him to take risks, then they must have, the requisite personnel in other roles to be able to compensate for that. And two, I still think, even if he's going to play this way, the best players in the world, there's Phil Salts, the Butlers, Travis Head, for example, Mitch Marsh, they are also aggressive, but they find a better balance and structure between responsibility and attack. So it's up to him and the individual players as well to find that tempo more consistently. But we all know when he has a good day, he can have a really big day with bat in hand. And it's just about getting this more often.
And that's the issue, right? Because he's 33 years old now. I remember that Gale had similar issues, but he became more consistent in the T20 game as his career went on. The T20 World Cup is just a few months away, so I guess the question is it too late to try someone else, or did this not give him even incentive for him to continue in the role?
I don't think it's too late at all, Donald. I think, look, the West Indies have got 27 T20 internationals to the next T20 World Cup. And whilst Lewis's experience, I believe that Darren Sammy should be saying to the Caribbean, there's a clean slate for 2 openers to make a case to open the batting at the World Cup. There's enough matches. There's also a Caribbean Premier League coming up this summer. And I want to see if Lewis, one, can be consistent enough in the CPL to cement a place in the team. Can he be consistent in the upcoming bilateral series? Because we assume after this he'll be back for Australia and Pakistan. But I don't think that any player should be given a guarantee for the T20 World Cup, just because of the amount of matches you have until then, and you want to create competition for places. And if we be real, I mean, 150-plus score in 11 innings for Evin Lewis, he will want to be a lot better than that. And the West Indies will want more production from their openers than 1 in 11.
I'm trying to wrap my mind around our performance in the field, right? Because it seems a little bit toothless what our bowlers are doing whenever it's their time to either defend the total, because Ireland came close to 200 in chasing down this one. And yes, of course, the pressure was off our bowlers, but against better opposition, it could have been a challenging day out. What needs to be done in order for our bowling to improve ahead of the World Cup? Or do we, as in the case with Evin Lewis, do we have to look at other options?
I know it sounds quite simple and not complicated, but they have to get better. As simple as that. When I think about this group, they're experienced enough. The Alzari Josephs, the Romario Shepherds, they're experienced enough to be better than going at 15 runs and over in Joseph's case and 5 power play overs in the series. The West Indies picked up 4 wickets in 3 power plays throughout this series, and I thought that in itself is extremely disappointing. You look at, again, the death bowling is a problem, 12 and over. They need to find, I think it's a bit of both. The current players have to get better, and that comes with being able to execute. And look, it's easier said than done. England came at the West Indies quite hard. But you even look at the Ireland game, 64 for 1 in the power play, and I know conditions aren't easy. But when you get to India, given what we've seen in the IPL, conditions won't be easy there as well. And other teams are finding a way to do it. So it's up to the West Indies to find a way. I personally think this is a bowling attack that needs 2 things. One, a wicket-taking spinner, probably a leg spinner. I don't see any around the region that are probably ready for 6 months' time. But the second position is a left-arm seamer. A different angle. I know we've talked about this ad infinitum. I still think Obed McCoy at 28 years old is not finished and can still be a project that maybe is invested in. And then there's Jediah Blades as well. But they need to offer some variety in that bowling attack with a left-arm angle, someone that can bowl maybe at both ends of the innings, the front and the back end. But something has to change in this bowling lineup because they're not going to win games bowling like this.
Yeah. And you talk about leg spinners, Nikhil, and also left-arm seamers, and you spoke about Obed McCoy. And I think about a few of the leg spinners we've had in recent years. Hayden Walsh Jr., Yannick Correa had gotten into the setup for a bit as well. What's the issue why we have been unable to improve these players to the point where they can maintain their places in the setup?
I wish I had an answer for you. I honestly don't know. I don't know why there's been such a lack of production. But if we think about early days, when Samuel Badru was in the team, there were never really many leg spinners around the region. You can think about Imran Khan and there's a few others. But when it comes to the T20 format, that in itself is a separate skill. I do think one aspect is a lack of exposure. And I think that's what the breakout tournament will bring in now, where they're just not exposed enough to T20 cricket. And when you have a CPL, most teams are not willing to take a risk on young leg spinners because of, one, how tough it is to bowl leg spin. 2, the downside if you can get it wrong, especially when you play at grounds like Warner Park and the smaller venues. So I do think with the breakout in a few years' time, you'll start to see more leg spinners being produced. And I'm not at a position to reveal the squads yet. They're coming out in a few days. But you will see a greater influx and more leg spinners being given opportunity in this year's CPL. So maybe that's what we needed. I think it's a lack of opportunity, but also they've just not been good enough and exposed enough to the T20 format.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've been letting so much slip on this show in recent days, Nikhil, but I'll let that one slip as well, and I won't put you under any pressure. I'm giving you guys
the exclusive. I'm giving you the exclusive.
You're giving us the exclusive nothing, actually, but that's fine.
Some people can be so ungrateful.
Let's work with that. What should we make of the Andre Russell situation coming out of this tour?
I think that there needs to be a conversation had here. First of all, where Andre Russell's body is at in terms of, is he capable of making it to the next 6 months with franchise cricket around? And we know that's his sort of priority now in this back end of his career. But also if the West Indies can find other bowlers and all-rounders, rather, to fill in that skill set. Because I do think you can clearly see on the field, fitness is an issue for him. And look, we know what he's capable of doing at his best. But I think if you put his performances alongside the fact that he's been it's been an injury-ridden 2 years. I think there are definitely other alternatives that the West Indies can look at. But there needs to be a conversation between Russell, Darren Sammy, and Cricket West Indies as to what the future looks like. Because I do think if he is to play the World Cup, then he needs to be fit and probably needs to prioritize playing a bit more bilateral cricket for the West Indies to show that he's capable of getting back to that, best performance. But it's hard for him to come into, a series here, then play next 3 months from now. International cricket is quite different than franchise cricket, so a conversation needs to be had.
And do you think if it comes to that, Darren Sammy will be strong enough to have that conversation with Andre Russell? And I ask that question because we've seen in the past where selectors have not been strong enough to have that conversation, and we've had disastrous campaign in some instances because of it.
Look, Ricardo, if we analyze Darren Sammy's patterns in the past, obviously his way is going for guys that are experienced and sort of looking at what guys' potentials are. You think about the team that's here, you think about how many of these squad members have been in the West Indies for a number of years, even if they're not now at their prime or in their best form. But why I think this is going to be different going forward is I think this tour and the last 4 series where the West Indies have lost all of them, going back to Sri Lanka in October last year, I think this is a wake-up call for Darren Sammy that he's got to change the blueprint. Something has to change. You cannot keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So I do think this is going to serve as a wake-up call for him and sort of serve as a chance to do something different. There's still time. 27 T20 internationals is a lot of time. And I think we saw a bit of that with the way they played in that one T20I in Ireland. Robin Powell batting at 3, Casey Carty coming into the team. I think Carty is an option in that West Indies top order because he's shown improvements against spin. Robin Powell himself has advanced his skill set against spin. But something has to change. And I think there's ample time and matches for the West Indies to experiment. So there's really no excuse.
Yeah, after the England series, Darren Sammy came out lashing at the bowlers. And essentially, I suspect I was reading him correctly. But essentially, Darren Sammy was saying the bowlers aren't good enough. They aren't executing well enough. And that the plans are in place. It's not that the plans are bad, but if the execution is poor, then we won't win many matches. But again, the part that struck me was the strong suggestion that these bowlers right now are just not good enough. Is that the truth?
Yes. The numbers tell you that. The numbers tell you that they've not been good enough. If you compare them to the other teams in the world, as much as England last year, England this year, as much as Bangladesh came at them, they're not good enough in terms of, I'm not saying that this personnel is not the ones for the team. When I look at these 6 bowlers compared to the rest around the region, I think these are the men to carry the West Indies forward. In terms of if their skill set is good enough at this stage, it's not. And you look at the same reoccurring problems that have plagued the West Indies for a number of years. I do agree with Sammy that you could see that there's some semblance of a plan in place. You can see the structure of what they're trying to do. But if you can't execute your skills in the power play, I think that in itself is the biggest issue. And there's a few examples. I think back to the England series when, Romario Shepherd in the first T20I bowled a few pace-off deliveries in the power play. Ben Duckett was dismissed. And then after that, not a single other slow ball attempted. And things like not adjusting to conditions, these are guys that have played more than 50 T20s. So I expect, and probably in the least, more than 100 and 150. So I expect more from them. They've shown us that they can be better than that. So I think these are the men in terms of if their skill set is good enough, not at this stage.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to leave it there, Nikhil. I know that you have a lot of time for the teenage leg spinner, Zishan Motara, who did well in the West Indies Academy win over the Sri Lanka emerging team over the past couple of days. Obviously, he may not be ready for this timeline that you're talking about, but maybe he's one for the future that could develop as a potent leg spinner for the Windies.
Certainly, I think his control, the height that he offers is quite different, Lance. And also there's Michael McKenzie, who took the most wickets at the breakout.
Yes.
17-year-olds from Antigua. But it's hard when these guys are now playing their first T20 games in life, or maybe at this level in life. It's hard to just throw them into international cricket and expect that they're going to solve all the problems. So it needs to be a long-term development, and hopefully then you continue to have a production line of leg spinners coming through, from this year onwards with the breakout.
Okay, all right, we're going to leave it there, Nikhil. I see Mr. Puran and Messrs. Russell and Sunil Narayan are 0-2 with their teams in the Major League Cricket in the USA. Try to give them some better luck from the commentary booth.
I'll tell them the SportsMax team is wishing them well.
Okay, sir. We'll be back with
Thanks,
more
sir.
on the SportsMax Zone.